Picture this for a second. You walk up to a roulette table in a crowded casino, you reach into your pocket and you pull out a solid 100,000-pound chip.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and you just drop it right on black. You cross your fingers, the wheel spins, and boom, it's gone. Poof.
Just swept away by the dealer.
Exactly, swept away. Now, you would obviously never do that in real life. But if you're a sales leader, or a hiring manager, or an executive listening to this deep dive right now, there is actually a very good chance you are making that exact gamble.
And losing.
And losing, yes. Every single year. Because, according to the data, hiring the wrong salesperson can easily cost an organization upwards of 100,000 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, it is a staggering number when you actually lay out the math. And I think what's, really insidious about that figure is that the base salary is just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. It's not just the salary.
No, not at all.
Well,
You are also bleeding capital on recruitment fees, and then there's the wasted management bandwidth. The time spent trying to coach someone who is just fundamentally in the wrong seat.
which is exhausting for everyone involved.
It really is.
Yeah.
And perhaps the most painful part for any executive is the invisible cost.
The lost revenue opportunities.
Exactly. You have a premium territory just sitting there in the hands of an ineffective rep for, 6 to 9 months? It's brutal.
It's totally brutal. So today we are looking at some fascinating research from Wynn Nathan Davis at the Sales Experts. We're going to try to figure out why candidates who have these absolute gold-plated CVs, people who just interview like a dream, why they suddenly crash and burn when they actually hit the sales floor.
Yeah, the classic resume versus reality trap.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack the anatomy of a failed sales hire. And more importantly, we want to reverse engineer how to secure the top 1% of sales talent. We're talking about building a systemic engine for actual sales success.
And to achieve that level of sales success, we really need to dismantle a very pervasive myth right out of the gate.
Okay, let's hear it.
Salespeople very rarely fail because they simply lack the innate ability to sell.
Wait, really? Because I feel like that's the go-to excuse.
Oh, absolutely. Blaming a lack of talent is the easiest excuse a hiring manager can make, right? It absolves them of making a bad hire. But the foundational thesis of this research from the sales experts is that sales ability is not this universal transferable aura.
It's contextual.
Highly contextual. They fail because the specific environment of the role is just the wrong fit for their specific behavioral muscles.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because fit is, it's that exact buzzword that dominates every single post-interview debrief.
Oh, yeah. Are they a good fit?
Right. Everyone wants a candidate who is a good fit. But we've established that a bad hire costs $100,000, and it usually stems from this super vague concept. So when we strip away all the corporate jargon, what does environmental alignment actually look like in practice?
Well, fit is far too often misinterpreted as culture fit, right?
Yeah.
Whether you want to grab a beer with the person after work.
Which is nice, but it doesn't close deals.
Exactly. What we are really talking about is external market alignment.
Yeah.
So let's just look at deal size for a second. The research highlights the genuinely jarring transition between navigating a 5,000-pound transactional product versus, say, a 500,000-pound enterprise solution.
Huge difference.
Massive.
Yeah.
The psychology, the cadence, the actual daily reality of those two environments, they could not be more different.
Okay, so I have to push back on this a little bit, or at least, play devil's advocate for the hiring managers out there listening.
Go for it.
Shouldn't a truly talented salesperson just be able to adapt? If you have the charisma, the drive, the objection handling skills to ruthlessly close a 5,000-pound deal today, logic kind of suggests you should be able to learn how to close a 500,000-pound deal over the next 6 months, right?
It's a completely logical assumption, but it is fundamentally flawed.
Okay.
Because it completely ignores the daily metabolic rate of the work. Think about the psychology of a high-volume transactional sale. The environment is built purely on velocity.
Okay.
It's about rapid-fire objection handling. It's maintaining this relentless high energy across 40 calls a day and creating immediate manufactured urgency.
You get a quick yes or a quick no, and you immediately move on.
Exactly. And that requires a very specific kind of emotional resilience to constant rejection. It's a reliance on instant gratification.
Yeah, I've seen that dynamic play out. You are essentially chasing a daily dopamine hit. You close a deal, you ring the sales bell, and then you just reset the next morning.
Right. Now take that exact same high-energy, velocity-driven professional and drop them into an enterprise environment selling a 500,000 pounds solution.
Total shock to the system.
Completely.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the sales cycle goes from 3 days to 9 months. There's no daily dopamine hit. There's no bell to ring on a random Tuesday afternoon.
It's just a lot of waiting.
Waiting and planning. Success in that environment requires deep strategic patience. It requires the meticulous ability to map out a massive organizational chart, understand highly complex business architectures, and actually maintain momentum over 3 quarters without getting bored or frustrated or desperate.
Right, because if you put a transactional superstar into a complex enterprise role,
They will try to force urgency where it doesn't belong.
Well-
They'll alienate the buyer, and they will fail.
wow. Okay, when you frame it around the metabolic rate of the job-like velocity versus strategic patience, it makes total sense why that transition is so violent. But deal size is just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Correct. The external environment also dictates who's actually sitting across the table from you.
Right. Because selling a straightforward piece of software directly to, say, a small business owner who can just pull out a corporate credit card right there on the spot, that is a completely different sport than selling into the enterprise.
Oh, it's not even the same league. What's fascinating here is how the power dynamics completely shift when you move upmarket. Well, in a small business environment, you are often relying on direct emotional appeal, personal charm, maybe a very straightforward pitch to an owner's immediate pain points.
Buy this, it'll solve your headache today.
Exactly. But when you are selling complex products into corporate environments, charm is utterly insufficient. I mean, it doesn't work. You are navigating corporate procurement teams whose sole job, literally their only job, is to commoditize your offering and strip away your margin.
Yikes. That is a tough crowd.
And it's not just procurement. You're dealing with technical specialists and engineers who are going to interrogate your API integrations, your data compliance, your security protocols.
Yeah, so you're no longer just convincing one person that they need your product. You are tasked with building consensus among an entire committee of people.
Right.
And they all have competing agendas, different departmental budgets, entirely different reasons to say no. Like the CFO cares about the balance sheet, the CTO cares about implementation friction, and the end user just wants a better UI.
And managing those multi-threaded, highly complex relationships requires a level of executive presence, technical fluency, and honestly, project management skill that a small business seller simply has not had the chance to develop.
So it's not that they're bad at sales.
Not at all. This does not mean they are a poor salesperson. It means they are functionally out of their depth in that specific buyer ecosystem.
Okay, so we have established that a candidate can completely understand how to sell, but if you misalign their historical deal size or the complexity of their typical buyer, you are just throwing that 100,000-pound chip right off the table.
Yes, gone.
But what happens when you get the external factors right? Like, let's say you hire someone who absolutely knows the enterprise motion, they know the buyer, they know the long sales cycle. Do they still fail?
Oh, they absolutely still fail if the internal dynamics of the company are chaotic or misaligned.
Really?
Yeah.
The internal stuff matters that much?
Yeah. The internal environment is where many companies inadvertently sabotage their own premium hires. And honestly, the most glaring manifestation of this is the chronic inability of executives to separate the role of a hunter from an account manager.
Oh man, we see this constantly.
Constantly. These are two fundamentally distinct behavioral profiles, yet we constantly see them mashed together into a single impossible job description.
I know. But why do smart executives keep doing this? My assumption is that it usually comes down to, like, budget constraints or maybe a desperate need to hit two conflicting goals at the exact same time.
Yeah, that's usually it.
The company needs net new revenue immediately, but they also can't afford to lose any of their existing annual recurring revenue, so they just throw both mandates at one person and hope they find a unicorn.
And that is the exact executive delusion driving the problem.
Yeah.
Look, a hunter thrives on new business development. They are aggressive prospectors who love the thrill of the chase.
They like kicking down doors.
Yes. They are comfortable breaking through the noise and getting that initial signature. But once the ink is dry, their behavioral profile dictates that they want to go back out into the wild to hunt again.
Right. Maintaining a steady state relationship is probably tedious to them.
Incredibly tedious. An account manager, conversely, is wired to nurture. They excel at building deep, multi-year relationships, identifying subtle upsell opportunities, and ensuring just airtight client retention.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think, because combining those two profiles is essentially like taking a highly specialized tool, let's say a chainsaw, and trying to use it to perform delicate brain surgery just because you only have the budget for one tool.
That is a terrifying image, but yes,
You are going to make a
a
mess.
huge mess. To use a slightly less bloody analogy, it's like you're hiring an elite sprinter and then punishing them when they refuse to run a marathon.
Yeah.
If you hand a hunter 50 key accounts to manage while simultaneously demanding, say, 40% territory growth,
Yeah.
the hunter will inevitably neglect the existing accounts. And that leads to massive churn.
And if you give that same mandate to an account manager,
They will overservice the existing accounts and generate absolutely zero net new pipeline.
wow. But the internal pitfalls don't stop at the role definition, though. The research points out that a lack of sales structure is a massive driver of failure.
Oh, huge.
High-performing teams rely on defined pipeline stages, explicit qualification criteria, regular forecasting rhythms. But I wonder, how much of this early turnover is just a hiring manager abdicating their responsibility under the guise of hiring a self-starter.
Oh, I mean, if we connect this to the bigger picture, a chaotic onboarding process is easily the leading cause of early preventable turnover.
Just completely preventable.
I have seen organizations hire exceptional, highly paid talent, hand them a laptop, give them a login to the CRM, and essentially say, go figure it out.
That is insane.
And they justify this by saying, well, we hired a senior professional who should know how to sell. But that senior professional does not know your specific product intricacies.
Or the internal red tape.
Exactly. They do not know your internal political red tape, and they do not know the historical nuances of your buyer personas.
So without a structured onboarding program, which, means rigorous product training, customer insight sessions, explicit territory mapping, even the most talented rep is going to just default to whatever activities feel productive to them.
And those activities rarely align with the strategic goals the company is actually trying to achieve.
Right.
Furthermore, they will inevitably clash with the company culture. Consider a scenario where an executive hires a lone wolf closer.
Oh, boy.
Right. This candidate is highly independent, totally entrepreneurial, and historically crushes their quota, but they do it entirely their own way.
And then you bring that person into a highly matrixed, deeply corporate culture.
Yes. A culture where they're required to log every single micro-interaction in Salesforce, attend 3 internal alignment meetings a week, and get legal approval for every minor discount.
They are going to suffocate.
Completely. Their performance will plummet, not because their talent magically evaporated, but because the internal friction of the company's culture just drains the cognitive energy they should be deploying out in the market closing deals.
This raises an important question, then, for any leadership team drafting a job requisition. Are you hiring for the culture and structure you actually have, or the culture and structure you naively wish you had?
That's the million-dollar question. You must be brutally honest about your internal reality before you bring someone in.
Okay, so we have laid out the anatomy of the failure. We know the 100,000-pound mistake happens because of external mismatches, with deal size and buyer complexity, and internal mismatches, with muddled roles, chaotic onboarding, and culture friction.
Right.
So what does this all mean for the executive listening right now? How do we actually fix the hiring playbook to prevent this?
Well, the transformation begins by fundamentally changing how you evaluate a candidate in the first place, which means moving far beyond the CV.
Okay, tell me more about that.
As the insights from the sales experts reveal, a standard resume and a charismatic interview are terrible predictors of success in your specific environment. A CV is essentially just a piece of personal marketing collateral.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It will boldly state that a rep achieved 150% of their quota at a respected brand. What it will not tell you is how they achieved it.
And that is a crucial distinction, because a CV doesn't tell you if they had a massive team of sales development reps booking all their meetings for them.
Exactly. Or a brilliant sales engineer running all their technical demos. Or a trillion-dollar marketing budget delivering warm inbound leads straight to their inbox.
Right. It strips away all the context.
Precisely. Which is why companies must transition to structured behavioral recruitment. You have to stop evaluating based on charm and start aggressively evaluating pipeline generation capability, deal ownership, and specific behavioral markers.
So how do you test for that?
Well, if your environment requires navigating 6-month sales cycles with reluctant CFOs, you cannot just ask if they're good at closing. You need to present a complex scenario. Ask them to walk you step by step through how they identify the economic buyer, how they bypass a hostile IT director, and how they build a business case for the board.
That makes a lot of sense. And finding the candidates who actually possess those specific keys to your specific locks requires a completely different sourcing strategy, doesn't it?
It does.
Because the research dives into the mechanics of market mapping, which is this foundational tool used by specialist recruiters. Instead of posting a job ad and passively sifting through whoever happens to apply, market mapping is highly proactive.
Yeah, market mapping is essentially an investigative process. A specialist recruiter will analyze your company's annual contract value, your specific sales cycle velocity, and your target buyer persona.
Okay.
Then they look out into the broader market and identify the exact companies, whether that's competitors or adjacent technology providers, that share those exact same environmental characteristics.
They are mapping the ecosystem to find the environments that mirror yours. I
Exhibit.
look at it like reverse engineering a complex lock. You don't just grab a handful of random keys and try them one by one. You study the tumblers, the deal size, the complexity, the internal structure, and then you go out into the world and find the specific professional who has already proven they have the exact shape required to turn that lock.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it. And that proactive targeting leads directly to the practice of headhunting passive candidates.
Right, because the best people aren't usually looking.
Exactly. Many executives still operate under the assumption that they can just post an attractive salary on a job board and the best talent will flock to them. The reality of the market is that the absolute top-tier sales professionals, the top 1% who consistently blow past their targets, are rarely looking for jobs.
Why would they be?
Right. They're currently employed, they're highly respected in their current organizations, they are making exceptional commission, and they're content.
So if you are relying solely on inbound applications, you are inherently filtering for people who are either unemployed, unhappy, or underperforming in their current roles.
Yes, you are completely missing out on the premium talent pool. True sales success in hiring is not a game of volume. It is a game of extreme precision.
Okay.
It requires meticulous alignment between the candidate's historical environment and your company's actual daily reality. By mapping the market and actively headhunting, you're systematically selecting for that alignment, rather than just hoping it falls into your lap through an inbound portal.
This analysis just fundamentally changes how we should look at talent acquisition. We've covered a significant amount of ground today, navigating from the external market realities to the internal structural traps, and finally to the mechanics of proactive recruitment.
We really have.
So let's synthesize this into some rapid-fire takeaways for the executives listening right now who might literally have a hiring requisition sitting on their desk. First and foremost, stop hiring based on general charm, a firm handshake, or an impressive brand name on a piece of paper. You must hire for specific environmental alignment.
Absolutely.
You need to map their previous deal sizes, their cycle lengths, and their buyer complexity directly to what your company actually demands on a daily basis.
And the second major takeaway is to audit your internal structure with brutal honesty. You must clearly define whether your strategic goal requires a hunter to break net new ground or an account manager to protect and expand existing revenue.
Right. Don't mix the tools.
Do not succumb to the temptation of mixing those profiles just to save headcount. And once you do make that aligned hire, you must build a structured, rigorous onboarding process to support them. Do not let your new enterprise closer wander around the building looking for the starting line.
Such great advice.
Yeah.
Listen, if you are a sales leader listening to this and you want to refine your hiring strategy, if you are serious about moving away from guesswork, stopping the 100,000-pound mistakes, and securing the top 1% of talent, you really need to dive deeper into this methodology.
It's game-changing.
We highly recommend visiting thesalesexperts.com. Specifically, go explore their Q&A section. It is an absolute goldmine of actionable information detailing exactly how specialist recruiters identify, evaluate, and assess top-tier candidates using these structured, rigorous methods.
It really is an invaluable resource for transitioning your recruitment from a gamble into a predictable engine.
Definitely.
But before we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If you are sitting there reflecting on your team right now, and your last 3 sales hires simply didn't work out, is it really a massive talent shortage in the broader market? Or is your company's actual day-to-day sales environment completely misaligned with the job description you keep posting?
Wow. That is a tough mirror check question, but it is the exact question you need to ask yourself before you walk back up to that roulette table. Stop throwing 100,000-pound chips blindly onto the felt. Understand your environment, map the market, reverse engineer the luck, and go get the exact fit you need. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we will catch you on the next one.